welcome to the Pitch to Bricks podcast.
Thank
the
you.
First guest, Jack Mackreth. Welcome.
No pressure.
So Jack, footballer turned accountant. Give us a little bit of a background, like where did football start for you? How did you end up going into accountancy?
Well, obviously football started from day one.
Yeah.
Always loved football. But from a professional point of view, obviously come through at Tranmere. Spent a couple of years there and did 2-year YT, 1 year pro, and then the reality of non-league football hit, so I got released after my third year contract. I'd obviously been on loan and things like that at lower league clubs, but signed for Barrow, and that was like my first taste of proper pressure. And
how old were you then?
I'd have been 17
going and playing for Barrow in the
conference. To be honest, I loved it there. I loved it. And
as a winger as well.
It was freezing cold. the wind on the pitch. I loved it though. To be honest, it was a really good changing room. I loved it there, and it was probably one of. I don't know. I suppose I don't know, but there was a good start to my career, if you like. I played a lot of football there. But yeah, started there. Went on to play for Macclesfield, Grimsby, Bury, Wrexham. Yeah, Wrexham was a regret.
It's a regret?
Well, I signed for Warrington in that summer.
Okay.
But I got offered another year contract. But I had to make the decision. The business had grew to a point where I had to pick between full-time football, and I left. And that summer, Ryan Reynolds bought the club.
Oh, no, really?
Yeah.
You could have been on Netflix and all sorts.
I'm not sure.
I bet there's several people out there, isn't there, that are like, I should have stayed at
this. Yeah. There's obviously regrets, but basically, every club I was with, I really enjoyed. But I always had a thought of life after playing, but only really when I left Tranmere. When I was at Tranmere, it was just I'm going to play in the Premier League, and I'm going to not worry about life after playing.
You left Tranmere the first time to go to Barrow at that point.
And then come back further on in my career. But actually, funny enough, when I come back, when I signed for Grimsby, I'd started studying my accountancy qualifications. And then my last game for Grimsby was at Wembley. I come back in the summer and I just knew that it changed. I'd been put in a different changing room, wasn't with the first team. The club were trying to get me out. I loved it there, but I'd signed back for Tranmere, and that was like the realisation. I can't remember how old, it must have been about 23, 24. That was the point when I thought, I need to now start thinking, what am I going to do? And started working in an accountancy company in Liverpool city centre. But I've told you before, I think I was leaving the training ground in a suit. I was getting so much stick from the lads. JRS. I used to sit next to JRS, and pretty much every day my suit would be tied up in some way. But,
did you stop that? Did you leave your suit in the car?
Very quickly that changed,
Service station or something on the way in.
But I just quite quickly realised that there was actually a gap in the market with footballers. There wasn't a company who specialised in working solely with sports people, mainly footballers, but actually with the ability to relate to them. So it just snowballed really, really quickly to a point where not long after that went to Bury, did 12 months there, and then signed for Wrexham, and not long after that I was in a position where I was having to make the decision. I think we had probably 10 to 15 members of staff, but I'm still full-time, so there'd be days where you'd be trying to do a meeting, but then the manager would throw on you've got an afternoon session.
We've had some experience of that ourselves with a full-time player working and doing something to prepare for life after sport, and I think that's a really interesting dynamic you've gone through there in terms of how did you manage that between being...
It was hard.
Because you'd think I'll do that when I'm part-time, but actually when you're part-time it's probably a bit too late, isn't it?
Because you're tired, you've travelled all around the country, it's a different sort of tired, but it was hard making the decision, because I remember Card's ringing me, and he's going, come to training, and I've come to training, and it was like, I wasn't really sure, but things happen for a reason. I think it was the right thing, but I think that it'd be nice. I've talked about having ex-players within our office. I think I can teach accountancy, I can teach finance, but you can't teach how to relate to a player and get them to understand what you're talking about. I know you've done it with a couple of rugby players. I'd love to have some ex-players. I've tried to approach like Liverpool and Everton, where any 18-year-olds get released,
that's really interesting.
Give them a career. But if they were to progress back into football with the likes of Warrington and climb the leagues, I'd be probably the only person that actually will understand. No, you've got to go and do that. And leave that door open for you to come back.
Of course.
But you've got to recover properly, because if you've not recovered as well as what your opposition have, it puts you to a disadvantage. But it's just like things like Tuesday night games. You get back from Southampton at 4 or 5 in the morning, but then you'd have to be up and ready to start running your own business at 8:30 the next day.
It's tough, that.
So it's tough, and it's like. But the only thing I'd say is what I do say to foot players is I struggled to switch off from it. So if you had a bad game, or if you're worried about your contract coming to an end, I'd struggle to put the ball away. You'd walk off the white. My dad used to say to me, when you walk off the pitch, when you walk off that white line, it's done. You can't do anything about it. But you put your head on your pillow overnight and not be able to switch off from it. Whereas if you come into an office or you're going onto a different passion, you actually can begin to switch off, and it gives you a different sort of perspective on things. And when I actually signed for Warrington, obviously when I met you, probably
not one of the players, by the way. But.
Oh, you mean that? It was probably one of the best in a different way. Obviously Warrington was a lot lower down, but I was only playing for enjoyment at this point, because I had my business, which was the income, and going to be the income for the rest of my life. But Warrington was just for playing. Obviously you still want to do well, but you've got that, you're just there for enjoyment. There's not as much pressure. I can remember, I always talk about, when players come into our office to ask me about these sort of things, I can remember when I had my tax bill, I've just got this memory of a ball being switched out to me, and it was around, obviously my tax bill's come in January, I've not paid it, so now in February, and I couldn't pay it back. I didn't have enough money to pay it back. Right. And as the ball's getting switched out to me,
thinking about that?
I'm thinking about, not so much the tax bill, I'm thinking, I need a new deal next season, so I need to do something as this ball arrives at my feet. And when you're in football, I think when you start thinking consciously rather than instinctively, it's difficult to. Football's an instinctive game. You've just got to read the full-back, read the centre-half, read where the goalkeeper is, whereas I'm thinking, I've got to score. I've got to score.
How many have been tackled?
I probably didn't even control the ball at that
point. But that's really interesting, that. And are you so the things you've talked about there, are you seeing that in your clients now? You're sort of seeing trigger points, and
do you know what? I've got this memory of. Do you remember Ronnie Moore?
Yeah.
Can you actually, the manager Ronnie Moore? His son Ian Moore played for Leeds, and I can remember. I think we were on a Christmas night out, and I'm sort of getting to the first team. I don't know why I remember this. He always used to say to me, he said to me this one night, "It goes quick. You need to enjoy it." And I remember thinking, I'm 17. Like, what are you going on about? And when I start talking like this, it makes me remember that like old pro. But it is. You see sort of things that I didn't do, or the mistakes I made, or some of the things that I did do right in other players. There's some of my ex-teammates I get so frustrated with. There's one in particular, and I'm just like, I've told you time and time again, he's like probably 5-6 years younger than me. He used to be in my car school, and he probably knows who it is now.
It's gonna be like that. That's me.
And it's just like, you can see the mistakes that I probably didn't make in him, but yeah, I suppose you do see it, and probably that's more my role now. Actually, I suppose I don't do that much of the accountancy side of things. It's just sort of relating to players, speaking to players.
So you said something before about the processes you have in your firm now are tailored on the back of the things that the milestones you experienced, and so if we move forward now to you running Kyzen, which is obviously established with, and it's a sports-based
company
that specialise in primarily footballers, that looking after their tax affairs. So what sort of things are you speaking to them about? How do you help them?
I suppose, I think the main thing that they need is education. I think the way I describe it to a footballer is, if you put like a restaurant owner or a business owner into our process, it's almost like we'd be giving that person too much information. They'd be going to understand how this works, where a footballer hasn't ever been taught. I can remember getting my first wage slip. No one's ever actually said to me, that's how you read your wage slip. So one of the first things I say to our younger players is, when you get paid, what's the first thing you look at?
And the bottom right hand corner.
No, what's gone in the bank.
That's what they will. Yeah, the bottom, the net.
They don't look at the pay slip.
Yeah.
They don't look at the pay slip because they've never been taught to look at the pay slip. So.
Right, okay. That's interesting.
I think educating them's the main thing. When I got my tax bill, I didn't have a clue where it come from, how it happened, whether it was right, whether it was wrong. I just thought, I pay tax each month. What happened? So we try and teach them about what things during their career will affect their tax position. And what I say to them, I want them to know is when to get back in touch. If you move club, you want to start a business, 5 red flags ring our office. And I don't think your sort of high street accountant tends to trade as, at the end of the tax year, give me your information, give me a P60, give me your bank statement, and I'll tell you what your tax position is.
Yeah, okay.
But it starts to then feed into bankruptcy for footballers. If you've got a player playing in the Premier League on 50 grand a week, the contract ends, their tax bill might be 100, 200, 300,000, but the tax bill doesn't come till 9 months later. At that point, they might be playing in League Two on 5 grand a week.
Yeah.
And they can't afford to pay that tax bill, and that's when the start of financial problem comes through. But
are you seeing a bit more of that as well with players maybe going into other like foreign leagues and things like that? That's obviously going to cause issues as well, isn't it?
Well, that's one of the things that we talk about. If you're going to go abroad, because a lot of players at the minute think this Saudi thing, they think it's tax free.
Yeah, okay.
And they're picking up the family and moving to Saudi.
Yeah.
And I'm going, well, it's not tax free. You've been in the UK for you're a UK tax resident. You need to pay tax here. There's a liability here. I think the main thing is educating them and planning. I think, it's nice to save them as much tax as possible, but the main thing is educate them on how the tax affairs work for a footballer, and make sure that you're planning adequately to pay the right amount of tax. But that's probably been my biggest hurdle. It's difficult to like transition from like a football changing room to now dealing with 30, 40 members of staff. No one's ever actually said to me, that's how you...
Yeah, I get that. It's all very well and good dealing with the player, dealing with the providing the service and stuff, but that's one element. But then actually running a business, nobody gives you any... Well,
I sometimes cross that line between going back into a sort of changing room environment. Like, and obviously you can't do that. But I don't mind some of it, because I like the staff to relate to... I like the staff to be able to relate to a player. I think that's one of my main things.
Okay.
I can relate to a player, so I can help them understand it, and I can speak their language. Whereas the staff, that's one of the things I want them to be.
That's a cultural thing, that, isn't it, over time?
Yeah. So for example, we had one of our young lads, Lewis. He's quite shy, to be honest with you. So I was talking to him about initiations.
All right.
So like my initiation,
getting up on the table and singing a song.
Well, my initiation was probably one of the cruelest things that has ever happened to me. I've had a couple of ones which you probably can't talk about. But my one was, I can remember the first Christmas that I was involved with the first team. Remember Carragher's Park, Liverpool?
Yeah.
Didn't know it was happening. Didn't know it was coming. Oh. There's a singer on around Christmas. The bar, absolutely chocker. I've obviously had a few drinks, John Welsh comes and gives me the light come on me, and John Welsh give me the mic in a live bar in town. And I'm thinking, but it builds your character to be able to... But we had a video of him from our Christmas party. So I was talking to him about like what would happen in a football changing room is that would be put on the telly. And you'd be expected to do that. I just like them to know like how a football changing room was. But
you've got to be careful with stuff like that. It's a different... but I hear what you're saying in terms of like being able to sort of relate to your client. I think whether they're a footballer or another profession.
We talk about actually when they come onto our system or they sign up, actually being able to figure out what they're here for. So if we know what they're here for, you can then sort of start to speak their language, and at that point then our service becomes valuable to them. Yeah,
that's interesting. So in terms of when they're looking to buy properties then, so where do you think, like, because that is very much it's who they come to first, isn't it? So for example, if we start with like a young player maybe wanting to get on the ladder, that the trigger point might be a case of I need me pay slips or things. But then the question we get asked a lot is like, if I'm going to start investing in property, do I buy that personally or do I buy it in a limited company? Like what does that conversation look like?
Just give you like a summary. I think property in a changing room it's a real buzzword. Every player's sort of got an interest in it. I think it's right for some players. I think it's a good thing for all players if it's planned out correctly. And I've talked about planning. I don't think players know enough about it to go and start a property business. We get phone calls to sort of say footballers don't know what they want to do. So property's like almost like they feel like an easy avenue to go into to create cash flow for when they stop playing. I just, as I said, I don't feel like they actually understand the difference between buying it personally to buying it through a limited company, and the implications of, we have players sometimes with a limited company, a number of properties in it, but taking profits out. In my opinion, a property company for a footballer should just be for one of two things: to help with cash flow when they stop playing, and obviously which is tax efficient. If they've stopped playing, they're now not a high rate taxpayer.
Yeah.
Or it should be used to have like almost a lump sum of money, so that when they stop playing, that they can actually get them hands on some liquid assets, if you like.
Yeah, yeah. And it's a point you make there about property being easy.
Yeah.
It's like an easy way of getting cash flow. Well, that's actually a massive myth, isn't it? Because property is actually a very active investment instead of a passive one. It can be passive, but then I suppose that's all about the people around you and things like that.
That's what I sort of saying. It's not that it's not right for everybody. I think you've got to have everything in order. So I talk to the players about you've got to have your tax affairs in order. I think they should have some sort of financial plan where they've got an ISA, they've looked at the pension, they've planned out their career for life after playing. And on top of that, as you said, it's not easy, but it does create cash flow where if you understand the tax implications, what the difference between a limited company and buying a person is, I think it is a good source of cash flow for them.
Yeah.
I think the main thing for them, if they get their tax affairs right, they get their financial planning correct, and they can build a successful property business with financial planning. What I think with a limited company, I think the main thing is it enables them to do what they want. I think you see a lot of footballers going into problems with mental health because, and I've sort of half experienced it myself, nothing will replace football ever.
Yeah.
No matter what you do, not like the normal man. Like I don't know whether you always want to be a mortgage advisor.
No.
I'm dreamt to be a mortgage.
It's a fair to,
One of our staff said to me the other day he wants to be an astronaut, and it concerned me. but
I can see that.
It's almost like they want to play football, and that's all they want to do. So then to go and have to pick up your second choice, it doesn't fulfil that void.
Yeah.
But if you get your financial plan and your tax affairs and your property portfolio correct, what I think it does enable you to, you're not sort of chasing your lifestyle with having to do a job that just fulfills you financially, if that makes sense to you.
Yeah, that's a really good point, yeah.
It enables you to go, right, I've got income coming, my finances are in order from a tax perspective, I've got a lump sum of money in my investments and in cash in the bank, and I've got my limited company which is creating X amount of money to fulfill my lifestyle. I'm not, now that I've stopped playing, I'm not going to have to drastically reduce my outgoings because I haven't got my football income. What enables them to, they're not trying to find 150 grand a year from a job.
Yeah.
What they're doing is they've got cash flow, money from their assets, and then they can go and be a physio and start right at the bottom. But enables them to do what they want to do. And that's for me, when I speak to our players, that's what the goal is, financial security, and going on, it give them an opportunity to go into something that they enjoy.
It's really, really interesting to hear you say that, because it's like property is a buzzword as a thing, but why? The why is more important, isn't it?
I think they think that they'll just do property.
Yeah.
And I think what they should
because everyone else does.
And it is a buzzword, and it can be very successful, and it is hard work. But for me, what they should be focusing on is, what do I want to do? If I want to do physiotherapy, agency, accountancy, mortgage advice, whatever it might be, you can go and get a job at Liverpool's under-9s as the physio on 15,000 a year and actually feel the fulfilment of building your way through that career. Because you've got everything else set in place. I don't think you should be some people do want to do it. We've got players that have built a successful business where they just focus on property, and if that's what they want to do, great. But I just feel as though that's what I want to achieve for our players. Yeah,
that's really interesting. So in terms of the podcast, we always ask, what would you say, what would be your golden nugget of advice to I want it to be as natural as possible. So
I think I've just given
what would be your golden nugget of advice that would be like your one liner, would be like the advice you would give to a young player coming through?
In regards to what I do, or a bit of both?
Whichever, doesn't matter.
I'll be honest with you, I feel like, I don't know what the sort of one-liner is, I've just talked about it a little bit then. I feel like one of the things that I get is, I'll start at next season, or I'll wait till the end of the month, or I'll wait till see if I get a new deal.
Yeah, okay.
I think with your tax affairs, financial planning, investing in property, the actual main thing is, the earlier you start, the easier it is. I think players need to surround themselves with good people. So they need to surround themselves with a good agent, good financial planner, a good accountant, and if they want to go and probably somebody like yourself who was within the industry, who knows football, knows sport, and they can trust. They're sort of approached by so many people. It is hard, but I think the main thing is the earlier you start, the better, and whether that's financial planning and planning for life after playing, but also finding your next phase. And it's not even from a financial point of view, it's generally just for
a psychological, a mental health
being happy. Being happy, you've got your fulfilment of something else for life after playing. And I have now got that. I love getting up in the morning. I'm like,
coming and doing podcasts.
Be in the gym this morning.
No, absolutely. And if I'm a player out and about and I'm possibly looking for some support, how the players get hold of you? What's the process?
For our social media page, we do free reviews. Basically, what that means is if you've got a tax problem, a financial problem, anything to do with tax, or even you just want to speak to someone about with a little bit of experience of sort of life after playing, I regularly speak to players to just sort of review their financial situation. So our social media page is probably our best avenue.
Brilliant. Well, Jack, thanks very much for coming on, and all the best.
Thank you.
Cheers, mate.